What's going on, guys? It's Cimo. So today I'm bringing to you my top 5 tech cards for the September 2019 format. Now these are a list of cards that I've noticed begun to emerge in the metagame and are cards that you definitely need to look out for if you plan on attending any sort of large-scale competitive event, because these cards are very impactful, and while some of them may be a little bit niche, if you're not prepared for them, these cards can absolutely devastate you and end your tournament career. And you may want to include these cards in your strategies as well, just because these cards are that powerful. So I wanted to go ahead and bring you guys that list of cards today. And you might see these cards pop up at the Pro Play Tour Orlando event taking place this weekend on September 7th and 8th. 20 bucks to enter, $2,000 prize pool is up for grabs. If you get your invite, you're invited to the $10,000 cash prize pool invitational in January, and I'll be there doing live stream commentary coverage for the event. So links in the description if you want to pre-register, and I hope to see you guys there. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get right into it. Kicking things off with number 5, we have a card that a lot of people actually underestimated at first glance, but with the way the meta has actually shaped up, turns out this card is pretty good, and that card is Trishula, the Dragon of Icy Imprisonment. Now, this is a fusion monster, and it does require 3 monsters with different names to make, and it must first be either fusion summoned using only monsters in your hand and or field, or special summoned from your extra deck by banishing the above cards you control, in which case you do not use polymerization. If this card was special summoned using only monsters that were originally dragons, you can reveal and banish 3 cards, 1 from your deck, 1 from the top of your opponent's deck, and 1 from their extra deck. You can only use this effect once per turn. So essentially you're just going to be banishing 3 dragons on your field, which means you're going to be including this card in any sort of guard dragon based strategy, because of course if the guard dragons couldn't get any better already, now they have this card at their disposal. And the reason why this card is so impactful is because of that banishing effect. You're not going to want to summon this if you're not going to be banishing dragons, because you want to be able to banish those cards from your opponent. And the card that you banish from your deck and the top of your opponent's deck is really minimal. It doesn't matter too much. The big impact here is banishing the card from your opponent's extra deck, because not only do you get the knowledge of what your opponent is playing, because you get to actually look at their extra deck. There's very few cards that actually allow you to do that, but you get to banish the most impactful card out of their extra deck. And this means if they're playing any sort of combo deck, you can completely cripple their strategy entirely. Let's say they're going up against Orcus and they're only playing 1 copy of Nightmare Mermaid. If you banish that copy of Nightmare Mermaid, they're going to have no way to Orcus combo, and it's going to be very difficult for them to be able to play in that game. So this card actually shifts the metagame in such a way that if you're playing a deck like Orcus, you might want to start including 2 copies of Mermaid in your extra deck, solely because Trishula is going to be a card in the metagame as long as these guard dragon based decks exist. Same thing goes if you're even going into a guard dragon mirror match. You can just banish an LP out of your opponent's extra deck, and now they're not going to be able to access their full guard dragon combo. There's so many powerful cards you can hit out of the extra deck with this fusion version of Trishula that it's really worth playing if you are playing any sort of dragon or guard dragon based strategy. And since so many of them are prominent in the current metagame at the moment, that's why I had to give Trishula my number 5 slot. But coming in at number 4, we have another card coming out of the extra deck that's a little bit more generic and easy to make, but is just as impactful: Blackluster Soldier, Soldier of Chaos. Now this is a Link 3 monster with 3,000 attack points that can be made with 3 monsters with different names. It has arrows that point up, bottom left, and bottom right. If it was Link summoned using a level 7 or higher monster or monsters as material, your opponent cannot target it with card effects, and it cannot be destroyed by your opponent's card effects. When this card destroys an opponent's monster by battle, you can activate one of these effects. You can either have this card gain 1,500 attack, it can make a second attack during the battle phase of your next turn, or you can banish 1 card on the field. Now, the big payoff here for playing Blackluster Soldier, Soldier of Chaos is if you do make it utilizing a level 7 or higher monster. And the reason for that is because now it has the protection from being targeted by your opponent's card effects and being destroyed by their card effects. There aren't too many cards in the metagame that can actually deal with a monster that is this large that cannot be targeted or destroyed. There's very few cards that actually have the ability to remove cards from the field in a non-targeting, non-destructive manner. Not that there aren't any, but the options are very few and far between. And Blackluster Soldier, Soldier of Chaos kind of creates a dynamic where it puts your opponent in check, and they have to find a way to clear it, because otherwise the longer this card stays on the field, the more problematic it's going to become, and it's going to be a lot worse for them to deal with. Some decks actually don't have any outs in the main board for dealing with a card like this, and it can honestly just force a early concession right then and there from your opponent. But the other thing when it comes to this card is the fact that it's also also has built-in non-targeting, non-destructive removal in the form of its third effect. And why that's so impactful is because if you are going against an opponent that has a threat that's very difficult to deal with, this card can most likely clean it up very easily, and the fact that it has a 3000 body to boot, gives you some link arrows, it's got a lot of good things going for it. Now, you do have to play in a deck that does play level 7 monsters if you want to get the protection effects enabled, but regardless, it's still a very powerful card nonetheless. You need to be cognizant that this card exists and have some way to out it depending on whatever deck that you're playing, because if not, if your opponent drops this on you and you don't have a way to out it, that might just be the end of the game right there. So for those reasons, that's why I gave Soldier of Chaos my number 4 slot. Now, coming in at number 3, we have one of the brand new Megaton promos, and you've been hearing a lot of hype around this card, but it's so good that people have actually been going out of their way to main deck it versus the combo decks, and it's Niburu, the Primal Being. Now, Niburu is a level 11 light rock effect monster with 3000 attack and 600 defense, and during the main phase, if your opponent normal or special summon 5 or more monsters this turn, as a quick effect, you can tribute as many face-up monsters on the field as possible, and if you do, special summon this card from your hand, then special summon one Primal Being token, which is a rock light level 11 attack and defensive question mark, to your opponent's field, and its attack and defense become the combined original attack and defense of the tributed monsters. You can only use this effect of Niburu once per turn. So the reason why this card is generating so much hype is because it's just as good as it sounds. The fact that as soon as your opponent summons 5 or more monsters at any point, as a quick effect, you can reveal Niburu and basically just wipe your opponent's board. And if you're playing a combo deck, you can just pretty much end their entire career. It is an activated effect, so do keep that in mind. If they have any way to negate monster effects, they can negate the Niburu, so you want to make sure that you time this in such a way that you're not going to get blown out by an effect like that for something like, let's say, Mystical Beast, Jackal King, and Pendulum, for instance. But for the most part, there aren't too many decks that can put up an effect negation monster on turn 1 before they summon at least 5 times. However, this card is just incredible against pretty much every single deck in the game that just summons more than 5 times. Special summoning is a core element of Yu-Gi-Oh! And you're going to be summoning multiple times a turn, unless you're playing a deck like Rogue that plays a very slow, stunish style approach, or something like Sky Striker. But for the most part, every other deck's going to summon a ton. You can drop Niburu at any point. You don't even have to do it as soon as they summon 5 times. You can wait till the perfect opportunity that it's going to completely crumble their strategy the hardest, and then you can just pretty much win the game outright from there. Even in the later turns, if your opponent's going to do something like Borosword OTK you, right before they go into battle phase, you can just drop Niburu, because most likely if they summoned a Borosword, they've summoned 5 or more times that turn, and then you can pretty much turn the game back around in your favor and hopefully be able to make a comeback. Niburu is just an absolute powerhouse. Like I said, the fact that people are main decking it is something you really need to be mindful of, and that's why I put Niburu at my number 3 slot. But coming in at number 2, we have a card that saw a ton of hype coming out of YCS Portland for different reasons than you might expect, but it doesn't take away from how powerful the card actually is, and that card is Giz Makoto, the Serpentron Sky Slasher. Now, this card is a dark machine with 2450 attack and 2450 defense. If it's in your hand or graveyard as a quick effect, you can banish 8 cards from the top of your deck face down and special summon this card. You can banish 3 cards from your extra deck face down, target a face-up monster on the field, and destroy it. You can only use 1 effect per turn and only once that turn. So why is this card seeing so much play? Well, the reason is because Gizmek actually outs a lot of things that really no other card can out in any particular situation. The fact that Gizmek has the ability to special summon itself out to the field during your opponent's end phase if they go first and won the die roll is pretty significant. So let's say, for instance, you're going up against, any sort of combo deck and they end on a board of, let's say, Hot Red Dragon Archfiend Abyss as well as Hieratic Seal of Heavenly Spheres. Well, what you can do is in the end phase, you can special summon the Gizmek because it can be special summoned from the hand. Then when your turn rolls around, you can immediately threaten either the Sphere or the Hot Red using Gizmek's effect. That's going to prompt the negation, most likely of the Hot Red Dragon Archfiend Abyss. Then Gizmek can just attack into the Spheres. That's going to prompt the Spheres to just bounce something, pop it, and then you're going to be able to have a completely free board with 5 other cards to be able to go ahead and do whatever the hell you want because you forced both of your opponent's negations with 1 single card. Now, the nice thing about Giz Makoto is the fact that you get to pick the cards that you're going to banish out of your extra deck, so it's not completely randomized. So there's more than likely going to be cards that you don't really care about too much, and you're going to feel perfectly okay with that. But the fact that Giz Makoto is also a dark and a machine means it fits nicely in decks like Orcus because it pretty much has synergy there. There's just a lot of really good things that this card has going for it. The 2450 body is nice if you really need the damage in there. I mean, ultimately, it's a very strong card. The fact that this card can pretty much almost out these multi-negation boards on its own is rightfully enough in itself to warrant seeing some sort of play. Yeah, sure, you do banish the top 8 of your deck, but realistically, if you're playing a deck that doesn't really care too much about that, then it's going to be free regardless. And even if you do, the fact that Gizmek has the huge payoff of being able to allow you to play the game is worth it enough in itself to warrant running. So for those reasons, that's why I went ahead and gave Giz Makoto my number 2 slot. But that's going to bring us to my number 1 tech card of the September 2019 format. And if you haven't already figured it out, it's a bit of an old one. It's Exchange. So Exchange is a very old spell card that reads, both players reveal their hands and add 1 card from each other's hand to their hand. So very simple card text, but why is this card good? Well, with cards into the game now like Niburu or all the different hand traps that people are playing to help combat the combo decks, Exchange has a very interesting thing going for it. So if you're playing a combo deck, in most instances, you're gonna have multiple 1-card starters that are gonna allow you to get your play going. So when it comes to Exchange, you're gonna plop this card down, you get to look at your opponent's hand, see what hand traps they have. If they only have 1 single hand trap, you can just take that card out of their hand and add it to your own, and then you're gonna be able to go off with your combo, because even if they take one of your starter cards, you're more than likely gonna have another starter to be able to do your full combo regardless. Now your opponent doesn't have a hand trap, and you're gonna be able to full combo knowing that your opponent can't do anything to stop you. The thing is, even if your opponent does have multiple hand traps, because you get the hand knowledge with Exchange, you now know which cards to play around in terms of developing your board and proceeding with your combo, because depending on what combo deck you're playing, you know what certain choke points your deck may have, and so by being able to know which cards to play around and which cards you don't have to, you can tailor your plays in such a way that you're going to completely blank the cards that they have in their hand, and that way you're going to be able to effectively be able to set up your full combo board. And so that hand knowledge is so invaluable. We've talked about this in the past with cards like Mind Crush before we got, you know, the errata, or not the errata, but the rules update with it, I should say, where now you can't look at the hand anymore. Hand knowledge is so key in this game, and if there's any opportunity to see what your opponent has in their hand, it's going to be entirely beneficial. I think it's really cool to see a card like this exist in the competitive meta and be viable, just simply due to the fact not only does it solve the problem of hand traps for combo decks, but it also gives you that hand knowledge, which is completely invaluable. And so for all those reasons, that's why I had to go ahead and give Exchange my number 1 slot. Definitely look out for this card as well as all the other cards I discussed on this list, because these cards are not going anywhere for the foreseeable future. But guys, those are just my thoughts. Let me know down in the comments what you guys think, and if you have any more surprise tech cards that you've noticed developing in the metagame, I'd really love to hear your thoughts. So guys, thank you so much for watching the video. Be sure to like the video as always, subscribe to the channel for more amazing Yu-Gi-Oh content, and if you found this video helpful, consider supporting me on Patreon or becoming a YouTube channel member, because just by showing your support in any way that you can, you're investing in my ability to continue bringing you amazing Yu-Gi-Oh content. So thanks so much again, and we'll see you next time.